Hello, in this tutorial, you'll learn how to create your first game in Unreal Engine. We're going to cover how to make a first-person shooter game. If you're new to the channel, welcome to Unreal University. I make tutorials, videos, and news about how to make games in Unreal. I like to use Unreal as it's very powerful and allows you to code complete games without writing a line of code. In this video, you're going to learn how to make a character movement system, a weapon system, AI, and even more. Follow along till the end of this video and you'll have created your first-person shooter game. There are timestamps in the video so you can stop and come back at any time. This video is sponsored by my website, Unreal University. Check it out, it has a bunch of courses which will teach you how to make full games in Unreal, from 2D platformers, top-down shooters, FPS games, and more courses are being added all of the time. You can access all of the courses on my site by subscribing there. Before we get started, if you're completely new to Unreal Engine, you should at least know the basics. If you don't, I have a free course. Somewhere in the description of this video, you'll be able to find a link to it, and this basically covers Unreal Engine for complete beginners. With that said, make sure you have Unreal Engine installed, and let's get started. To get started, if you don't already, you're going to want to head over to unrealengine.com and install the Epic Games Launcher. Once you've done that, the Epic Games Launcher should look something like this, and to install Unreal Engine, just go to Library, then click this little button and go Add New Engine Version, and install the latest version of Unreal Engine, that's version 5.3.2. Once you've done that, you should be able to click this Launch button, and this will launch Unreal Engine. So when you launch Unreal Engine, it should open the Unreal Project browser, and from here we can create new Unreal Engine projects. Just go over to Games, and select the blank template. We're going to be coding a game from complete scratch. For the project name, give this the name of First Game or something appropriate, then just click Create.
Once it loads, it should look something like this. Now, when working in Unreal Engine, I normally like to have the content drawer docked in the layout. So if we just click Content Drawer, then select Dock in Layout, this content drawer will basically allow us to access and see all of the files that we currently have in our project.
So the first thing we're going to do is create a first-person character which we can play the game as. To do this, let's just go over to File, and then select New Level, then select Basic, then go Create, and this will create us a new level with a floor and a nice scene. So we want to save this level, so we'll just go to our content folder, right click and go Create New Folder, and just call this Levels. Then if we just click this little Save button, it'll ask us where we want to save the level that we're currently in. Just go to this Levels folder, and we can just call this our map. And go Save. So the next thing we're going to do is create a first-person character which we can play our game as. So if we just right-click and create another new folder, and just call this Blueprints, open this up, and to create a new blueprint, we can just right-click, select Blueprint Class, and select Character. So a character is a type of clone that includes the ability to walk. And we just want to call this our first-person character blueprint. Open this up, and then we just want to go Add, and for the time being, just add a camera, and this is going to be how our first-person character sees. We can compile this, close this, then the next thing we're going to do is create a game mode. So the game mode basically stores the settings for our game. We just want to right-click and go Blueprint Class, select a game mode base, and just call this the first-person game mode. Open this up, and then if we go to default pawn class, right now it's set to nothing. If we change this to be the first-person character, then go compile and save. For each level that we have, we can tell it what game mode we want it to have. If we just go over to Window, and select World Settings, we're going to see Game Mode Override. If we just drag our first-person game mode into it, this will mean this level will have our first-person game mode. So we're going to start the game as the first-person character. And in this Outlier tab here, where the player starts is going to be where the player spawns in this level. So if I just click the play button, I'm going to spawn where that player starts. So with this, we have our first-person character. Although there's one problem, we can't move our character, so the next thing we need to do is set up some controls so we can actually move our character. So to do this, we're just going to go back to our content folder, right-click, and create a new folder, and just call this input. Then we want to head inside here, right click and go input and select input mapping context. This will basically store all of the controls that we have in our game. Let's just call this the FPS underscore input mapping context. Then the next thing we need to do is set up some controls. So if we right click and go input and select input action, and just call this the move underscore input action, double click to open this up and change this value type to be an axis 2D. You'll see what this does in a second. Next, we can just save this, close this, and then open up the FPS input mapping context. We will go add new mapping, click this arrow, and just set the move input action. So the next thing we need to do is assign the keys we want our player to press in order to move. So our player is going to be able to move by pressing the WASD keys. So for this first key here, I'm going to look for W, then I'm going to add another key. This time I'm going to select S, then I'm going to add two more. For this one, I'm going to make it A, and for this one, I'm going to make it D. The next thing we need to do is add some modifiers to these keys. This will help tell the game which direction our player should move in. For the W one, we just want to go add modifier and select here and select swizzle input axis value. It's kind of hard to explain what these do now, so later on I'll explain everything that this does. Next, we just want to add another one and just give this the negate modifier. Then we want to go to S and we just want to add a modifier, and we also want to give this the swizzle input axis value. Then we just want to go to A and go add modifier and just give this the negate modifier. Okay, so with this we've set up the controls. Next, we just want to go over to our first person character, go over to the event graph. This is going to be where we code most of the logic for our first person character, and event begin play, so as soon as our game starts, we're going to give our player character their controls. So if we just right click and look for get controller, then from here we can drag off and look for pass to player controller, and then we can drag up here and look for get enhanced input local player subsystem. This will basically allow us to add the controls to our game, but we just want to drag up here and look for is valid. So this will just check to see that we have a valid controller. Connect from event begin play into here, and from here into here. And we can just drag off here and look for add mapping context. And we just want to select the FPS input mapping context, and this will add our first person character's controls to our game. Next, we just want to right click and look for the move input action. So here it is, move input action. And whenever my player presses W, S, A, or D, this trigger node is going to fire. And when this happens, we want our player character to move. So we can do that by dragging off here and looking for the add movement input. This needs a direction from which we're going to move our player character. We can just right click and look for get actor right vector and connect this into here. So the first thing we're going to code is making our player move towards the left and right. So earlier, I asked us to change this value type to be an axis 2D. What this does is, here we have this value called action value. If I just right click here and look for split structure pin, because we had this axis 2D, we have these two values here. If I just connect from X into here, actually I'm just going to drag up here and look for print string and connect from X into here. You'll see what this does in a second. And then we just want to drag off here again and look for add movement input. For this one, we just want to right click and look for get actor forward vector and connect this into here. And for the scale value, we want to connect from the Y into here. Okay, so I'll now show you what this print string does. If you remember, when we were making this FPS input mapping context, I asked us to add the negate modifier to this A key. Because we did that, if I now click the play button, and I click somewhere on my game and I press A, it's going to print string -1 and my player is going to move towards the left. However, if I press the D button, it's going to print string 1 and my player character is going to move towards the right. The negate modifier will basically make it a negative value, and that will cause our player character to move in the opposite direction. In the FPS input mapping context, we also added the swizzle input axis value. What this does is it makes the value come from the Y. So when I'm pressing either W or S, this is going to be either 1 or -1. So I'm just going to delete this print string here and drag up here and look for print string and connect from Y into here. And now if I go compile, close this, and I go play, when I press W, it is -1, and when I press S, it is +1. So I think I accidentally got those the wrong way around. But as you can see, because for the W button, we added the negate modifier, my player is moving in the opposite direction. So let me quickly fix that. For the W one, I'm just going to click none. And for the S one, I'm just going to add the negate modifier. Oops, okay, so the negate one. And now if I go play, I should be able to move forward when I press W, backwards when I press S, towards the left and towards the right. Nice. We can just go back to our first person character and remove the print string, now that we know what it does, and just connect this into here. Okay, so with this we've coded the movement for our player character. If I just select all of these nodes and press the C button, this will allow me to make a comment around the code that I've made. So I'm just going to call this handle movement. And if I just click this show bubble when zoomed, I can see this from afar. I'm also just going to comment these nodes and call this add controls. So the next thing we're going to do is make it so our player character can move around with their mouse, because right now we can't really move with our mouse. So to do this, if we just go back to our input folder, we're going to create a new control for when we want the player to look around. So if we just go input, select input action, and call this the look _ input action. Open up the FPS mapping context, and we just want to go add new mapping to add a new control. This time we'll select the look input action. And for this one, we just want to look for mouse and select this one, mouse XY 2D axis. Click this arrow here, and we just want to go add modifier and select the negate modifier. And for this one, we just want to uncheck X and Z. And save this. Go back to our first person character. Then we just want to right click and look for the look input action. Oh, and one more thing with the look input action, which I forgot to do. We just want to head back to it and make sure that it's an axis 2D. So when it's an axis 2D, it'll have this action value here, and we're just going to right click on this and go split structure pin. So we're going to be able to look around with our mouse for the X and Y. So to do this, we can just drag off here and look for add controller yaw input and connect this into X. And then we're going to look for add controller pitch input and connect this into the Y. Then if we just select our camera, very important, make sure that we have use point control rotation settings. Then go compile. And now if I click the play button and I click somewhere in the game, we should be able to look around with our mouse. Nice. So with this, we have a character which can move around, and we can also look around. The next thing we're going to do is make it so our player character can jump. So to do this, we're going to add a new input for jumping. So I'm just going to right click and go on input, select input action, and I'll call this the jump _ input action. If I open this up, I'm going to add a new mapping. This mapping is going to be for when I want my player to jump, and I'm going to make it so the player has to press the spacebar button in order to jump. So here, I'm going to look for spacebar. Then if I just save this and go back to my first person character, I'm going to right click and look for jump input action. This time, we're going to click this arrow. So whenever the player is holding the spacebar button, this triggers node is going to fire. When the player is jumping, I just want them to basically tap the key once, and then I want the player to jump. Whenever the player taps the key, this starter node is going to fire. For as long as the player is holding the key, this trigger node is going to fire. So when the player presses the spacebar button, this starter node is going to fire, and we're just going to look for the jump event, and this will basically cause our player character to jump. Then when the player lets go of the spacebar button, this completed node is going to fire, and we're just going to drag off here and look for the stop jumping. Now I go compile, and I close this, and I go play. When I press spacebar, I should be able to jump. Let's go over how we can change our player character's jumping settings. So if we go back to our first person character and select the character movement, go to details and just look for jump. And right now we can see our player character's jump Z velocity is 420. The higher we make this, the higher our player character can jump. So if I make this 600, my player's going to be able to jump a bit higher. Next, if we just select the first person character, we're going to see the jump max count is 1. So that basically means my player character can jump 1 time. If I change this to be 2, and I now play my game, the player character should be able to jump twice. So you can play around with that to basically change how many times your player character can jump. Next, we have the jump max hold time. If I change this to be 1, and I go compile, and I now go play, for as long as I'm holding spacebar for 1 second, my player character is going to continue to jump. So that's what the jump max hold time does. So those are the main jumping settings that we have. There's one more. So if we just go to character movement, right now the air control is 0.05. That's basically how much control my player has when they're in the air. This goes from a value of 0 to 1. So the closer this is to 1, the more control the player is going to have when they're in the air. So if I play my game again, the player should have a lot more control when they're in the air. The next thing we're going to do is give our player character a weapon which they can shoot. To do this, we're going to use some assets from Kenny. So shout out to Kenny. If we briefly close Unreal Engine, attached somewhere in the description of this video, I'm going to include a link to some assets made by Kenny. Just download them and drag them into your Unreal Engine folder. We can just click import. And if we just go to the model folder, there is this blaster weapon, and that's going to be the weapon which we're going to give our player character. Right now, none of these models have any textures. So if we go over to the textures folder, there's this texture file. We just need to open up this color material, because when Unreal Engine imported, it imported with the wrong texture. I just changed this to be the color map texture, then click apply. And then that should give all the materials their correct texture. So the first thing we're going to do is set up a gun which the player character can shoot. So in my blueprint folder, I'm just going to right click, go blueprint class, select an actor, and I'm just going to call this my gun underscore blueprint. We can open this up and go to components and go add and just look for a static mesh. And we can just call this our gun. And then go over here where it says static mesh and look for the blaster model. And we just want this one, blaster. Now I know from experience this is quite big. So click this anchor. This will make it so when we scale an item, it scales uniformly in all its axes. And just make this 0.1 to make it a lot smaller. Then with the gun selected, just scroll down and go to collision presets and make it have no collision, because we're going to make our player character hold this gun and we don't want it to interfere with our player's collision. Now that we've done this, just go compile, close this, and then go over to our first person character, go over to the viewport, and we just want to go add and look for a child actor. We can just call this the weapon. Select it, and then go over to child actor class. Here we can select what blueprint we want this to be, and we just want this to be the gun blueprint that we just made, and you should see it appear. We just want to select it and rotate it, and then kind of just move this in front of our player character's camera. To get more precision when we're moving an object, we can go here, and I'm just going to change the snap size to be 1, and I have a lot more precision when I'm moving this. So now if I go compile, close this, and go play, we can see the gun in my player character's hands. One more thing, I want the gun to basically move with my player character's camera. So if we just go back to our first person character, drag this weapon, and drag it inside of the camera. That way it's a child of the camera. And now when I move my camera, the gun should move with it. Nice. So the next thing we're going to do is code it so the player can actually shoot this gun. So we're going to create a new input for shooting. So I'm just going to right click and go input, select input action, and I'm just going to call this the shoot input action. I'll open up my FPS input mapping context, and I'm going to add a new mapping, and this time it's going to be for the shoot input action, and I'm going to make it so the player has to press the left mouse button in order to shoot. We can save this. Okay, I'm getting this error. Okay, the reason I'm getting this error is because last time when I removed this modifier, we just need to click here and go delete. And now I go save, I should get no errors. Okay, we can head back to our first person character, go over to the event graph, and let's set up shooting. So I'm just going to right click and look for the shoot input action. Click this little arrow. Whenever our player character shoots their gun, we're going to shoot an invisible line trace from the center of our screen. So when I press the left mouse button, this starter node will fire, and if we just drag off here and look for line trace by channel, we're going to shoot an invisible line, and we're going to detect whether this line hits something. Where this line is going to start, we can just drag in our camera, because we're going to be shooting the line trace from the center of our player's camera. Drag off here and look for get world location, and connect this into the start. We're going to end this a couple hundred units in front of the camera. So to do that, we first want to get our camera's rotation. So look for get world rotation. Then from here, we just want to drag off and look for get forward vector. This will get the forward direction of the camera. And we just want to drag off here and look for multiply. Right click here and change this to be a float. Right click and promote this to a variable and call this trace distance. So this is going to be how far our line trace is going to be. And then we just want to drag off get world location and look for add and connect this into here and this into end. So now we're going to have a line trace which is going to start where our camera is and it's going to end. Let's just compile this and let's put a value of 500 and it's going to end 500 units in front of our camera. Just to test that everything's working, make the draw debug for duration, go compile, and now if I go play, when I press the left mouse button, we should see a line trace. Nice. So that's coming from the center of our screen. The next thing we're going to do is add a crosshair so our player basically knows where they're shooting. If we go over to the sprite sorter, select all of these images, right click and go sprite actions and apply paper 2D texture settings. So we're going to create a crosshair with this image. If we just go to our content folder, I'm going to right click and create a new folder and call it UI. Open this up and then just right click and go user interface, select a widget blueprint, select user widget, and just call this the crosshair widget blueprint. So widget blueprints are blueprints which we're going to display on our player character's screen. If we open this up, we just want to go over to the palette and look for a canvas panel and drag this somewhere into the crosshair widget blueprint. So here is where we're going to design what's going to happen on our screen. We're just going to have a simple image. So if we just go to the palette and look for an image, drag this somewhere into the center of the screen, and just go over to anchor and select this one in the middle. This will just make it so this image is anchored to the middle of our screen. For the image, just go here where it says brush, then look for image, and look for the crosshair image that we imported. So here it is. Now its size is a bit weird, so let's just modify it and make it have a size of 40 in the X and a size of 40 in the Y. That way it's uniform. And then I want this to be directly in the center. So what we can do is go to position X and make this 0. Then go to position Y and make this 0. And then to make this basically directly in the center, for position Y, make this -20. And then for position X, make this -20. This will also depend on what size X and size Y you made it. So I've just made it half of these values. Okay, so we can compile this, then go back to our first person character. And after we basically add the controls for our game, we're going to add this crosshair to our screen. So I'm just going to drag up here and look for create widget. The widget I'm going to create is going to be the crosshair widget blueprint that we just made. Then we can just drag off here and look for add to viewport. compile this, and this will add this crosshair to our viewport. So when I play my game, we can see it there. And when I shoot, because I made the line trace come from the center of the camera, and we placed our crosshair in the center of the camera, our player character now has a very accurate aim. Nice. Now it's not really clear when my player character is shooting, so what we're going to do is create a quick animation which will make our gun go backwards whenever we are shooting our gun. So to do that, if we just go back to our first person character, and after we do our line trace, we just want to drag up here and look for add timeline, and just call this the shooting timeline. Connect this into play from start. We want this timeline to play from the start whenever we are firing our weapon. If we open this up, we want to make this have a length of 0.3 seconds. This is going to be a very fast animation. And we just want to go track and go add float track. And we can just call this our shooting track. Then we just want to right click and go add key to curve float. At time 0, we want this to have a value of 0. Then we want to right click again and add another key to the curve float. At time 0.15, so halfway through this timeline, we want this to have a value of 1. And then we want to add one more key, so if we just right click and go add key to curve float, at time 0.3, we want this to have a value of 0. Then if you just select the first point, right click and go auto, this will just make the timeline smoother. Do the same for the second point, just select it, right click and go auto. Now if we go back to our event graph, what we're going to do is basically over the duration of our timeline, we're going to make our weapon move backwards and then forwards. So if we drag in our weapon, drag up here and look for set relative location. Then right click here and look for split structure pin. So we're only going to be moving our weapon in one axis. So when I basically move it here, we can see its value is changing here in the x-axis. The red one is the x-axis, the green one here is this y-axis, and the blue one here is the z-axis. So we're going to make our weapon move in the x-axis. So for the y and the z, if we just drag up here and look for get relative location, right click here and look for split structure pin, and connect from y into y and z into z, as we're not going to be changing the value of this. Then for the x, if we just drag off this shooting track and look for lerp, what this lerp node will do is basically over the duration of our timeline, it's going to move from value A to B. So if I just right click here and break the link here and connect from the shooting track into here, this alpha basically determines how long this lerp track is going to be for. So when this lerp track is at a value of 1, it's going to be on value B. And when this lerp track is on a value of 0, it's going to be at value A. So basically, halfway through this timeline, we make this have a value of 1, and that will make it have value B in our lerp track. If we just select our weapon, right now we can see our weapon starts off at 20 in the x-axis. So here in A, I'm going to put 20. Then I'm just going to move my weapon slightly back to something like 18. I'm just going to move mine back. Make sure you move yours back to its starting location. So here in B, I'm going to put 18, then just connect this into X and this into update. So basically, when we shoot our gun, over the duration of 0.3 seconds, our weapon is going to move slightly backwards, then forwards again. Let's test this out. If I go compile, close this and play, when I shoot my weapon, we can see it moves backwards slightly. So with that, we've created a very simple animation for our weapon. Nice. The next thing we're going to do is create some particle effects which are going to appear whenever we fire our gun. If we go over to the sprites folder, we're going to create a new master material which we're going to use to create a bunch of particle effects. So if we just right click and go create new material and just call this particle underscore material, open this up, and if you go to material here, change the blend mode to be translucent and change the shading model to be unlit. This will make it so it's not affected by light. Then we just want to right click and look for particle color, because we're going to be using this material in a particle system. Then just right click and look for texture sample. We are going to be combining this material with a texture. And for this texture sample, just right click and go convert to parameter and just call this texture. Then right click and look for multiply. And just copy this, so press Ctrl C, then Ctrl V to duplicate this again, and connect from RGB into A, and from RGB into B here, and just connect it into emissive color. Then for the opacity, connect from the alpha value into here, and the alpha value into here, then connect this into opacity. And so that this doesn't have an error, if we just give this a texture, this can be anything, and just go apply. And then because we've made this master material, what we can do is create a bunch of materials which have the same settings as this. So if we just right click here and go create material instance, I just call this the burst 1 underscore material. Right click on this and duplicate it, and just call this the burst 2 underscore met. Then select this burst one and select this texture. Because we made it a parameter, we can change the value of this. And just look for the burst 1 texture. We can save this, then head over to the second one, check it, and change this to be the burst 2 texture, and save it. Okay, next we're going to create some particle effects based off these two materials. So I'm just going to go to my content folder, right click, and go to new folder, and I'll just call this particles. Open this up, right click, and I'm going to go Niagara system. Then go new system from selected emitter, and select next. And we just want to scroll down and find this one, simple sprite burst, and just go add, select finish, and just call this the burst. Whoops, so my thing just saved, so I'm just going to rename this again. I'll right click, rename this, and I'll just call this my burst 1 system. Then if we open this up, select this material, and change it to be the burst 1 material that we just made. So that's just this circle. If we go over to initial particle, we want this to be quite short, so give this a lifetime of 0.5. And that's all we're going to do for this particle. It's just going to show this, and we're going to make it appear in front of our gun. We can save this, then right click, go duplicate, and we just want to call this one the burst 2 system. Open it up, although this time we're going to change this to be the burst 2 mat. Then if we just select initial particle, and we want to go over, we're going to go to sprite attributes, and if I just expand this, go to sprite rotation mode, and we just want this to be random. And this will just make it so the sprite spawns with a random rotation, I think. Then if we just go to sprite rotation mode and change this to be random, that way this will basically randomly spawn. Okay, now we can just save this. And if we just go over to our gun blueprint, select the gun and go add, just look for system, and we want this one, Niagara particle system, and we can just call this our gun FX. Then if we go over to the event graph, right click, and look for add custom event, and just call this fired. So whenever we basically fire a gun, we're going to update this particle. If we just drag off here, go for set system, and then we want this one, set Niagara system asset, and just select burst 1. Then we just want to have a delay of 0.2 seconds, and then if we just copy this, paste this again, and change this to be burst 2. So we're going to make our gun effects be the first particle system, and then we'll wait 0.2 seconds, and then we'll make this our second particle system. We can compile this. Then, in order to tell the game when we basically fired our gun, if we just go back to our first person character, and over to the event graph, event begin play, we are going to create a reference to our weapon. So after we do all of this, if we drag in our weapon, drag off here, and look for get child actor, this will allow us to basically get the actor, which the child weapon is. And from here, we can drag off and cast to our gun blueprint. Connect this into here, and just right click and promote this to a variable. This way, we have a reference to the gun that the player is holding. Then whenever we're shooting our gun, we're going to call the fired event in our weapon blueprint. So I'm just going to drag in my gun, get it, and then call the fired custom event that we made, connect this into here, and this into here. And now if I go compile, and I go play, when I shoot my gun, you can see it spawns those particle effects. They are very big though, so let's fix that. If we just go to our particles and select the initial particle, right now we can see the uniform sprite size is 50. If we change this to be random uniform, and let's just make this 6 and 12. So these are the sizes that's going to be. It's going to be between 6 and 12. We can save this and do the same for the second one. So if we select the initial particle. So for the second one, if we just go here to sprite attributes and change it to be random uniform and make this between 6 and 12. Save this. And now if I go play, we can see the particle is a little smaller. It looks like the particle is in the completely wrong place. So I'm just going to go to my gun. I'm going to move the particle in front of my weapon. So here. Okay, we can compile this. And now if I go play, we can see when I shoot my gun, it has those particles. Nice. The next thing we're going to make is a jump pad which the player can jump on. So in the models folder, there is this platform. We're going to turn this into a jump pad which the player can jump on. So if we just go to our blueprint folder, right click and go blueprint class, select an actor, and just call this the jump pad blueprint. Open this up, and if we just go to add and look for a static mesh, which I'll call my pad, and in the static mesh, if we just look for the platform, and then if we go back to our components and go add and look for a box collision, move it up, and then if we just go here where it says select and scale objects and just scale it so it kind of fits around this jump pad. And I'm just going to move mine down a bit, so we kind of want it to fit around the black bits of the jump pad. So I'm just going to increase mine a bit. Again, if you want more precision when you're scaling a thing, go here, and then we can change this to be 0.03125, and you'll have even more precision. Okay, next, if we scroll down and go to on component begin overlap, when our player overlaps on this jump pad, we're going to launch our player up in the air. So if we drag off other actor and look for cast to first person character blueprint, so this should be whatever you named your character. So I called mine the first person character blueprint. So when our player overlaps this, all we're going to do is drag off our player character and look for the launch character. Now we're only going to launch our player character in the z-axis. So we just right click and look for split structure pin, then right click here and commit this to a variable, and we can just call this the launch velocity z. Just make sure that this is editable and expose on spawn, then go compile. This will allow us to basically change this when we place this in our game. I'm just going to give this a default value of 600 though. And then just check the Z override. This will just make it so when our player basically is launched in the air, it will give them this exact velocity. We can compile this, close this, and drag in our jump pad somewhere into the level. And if I just go play, and I jump on it, I should be launched in the air. Okay, nice. I actually don't like my players' jumping settings. I never changed them back. So if we just go back to our first person character, and in the details, if we look for jump, I'm going to make my jump max hold time 0. And in the character movement, I'm just going to make sure that they have a jump Z velocity of 420. That's the starting one. You can play around with this and give it whatever settings you want to. Okay, so I'm much more happy with that. And when I jump on this, you can see it launches my player up. Okay, nice. Oh, and I forgot to mention, we can basically change how high this launches the player. So if I just select this and hold Alt, that'll allow me to quickly create a duplicate of this. And if I change the launch velocity and this one to be 1,000, then I play my game. The launch pad on the left should launch me a lot higher. So if I go on this one, we can see it's less. So that's why we made that variable instance editable and exposed on spawn. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is code an enemy which the player can basically shoot and kill. And we'll also code it so this enemy can kill the player. So to get started, if we just right click and go create new blueprint class, this time select a pawn. And just call this the enemy blueprint. Open this up, and if we just go add, look for a static mesh, and call this the enemy body. For the static mesh, we want to look for this one, the torso. And then with the enemy body selected, just go add and look for another static mesh and call this the left blaster. And for the static mesh, we're going to look for blaster and select the left one. Then select the enemy body again. Then go add and add another static mesh and call this the right blaster. And in the static mesh, we just want to look for blaster and this time select the right one. Okay, so this is our enemy. We're going to make our enemy move up and down, so that way it's not just standing still when the player is trying to kill it. So we go over to the event graph, event begin play, we just want to add a timeline, and we are going to just play this. For this timeline here, if we just double click and open it up, check this looping box, this will just make it so this timeline will continually repeat. For the length of this, I'm just going to make mine 4 seconds. We can go add track, add a flow track, and we can just call this the enemy movement. Then I'm going to right click, add a key to the curve float. At time 0, I'll make this have a value of 0. Then I'm going to add another one. At time 2, I'm going to give this a value of 1. Then I'm going to add one more key. At time 4, so when the timeline's over, I'll make this have a value of 0. We can click these 2 arrows, and this will basically adjust our timeline. Then if we just zoom out, select this first point, right click and go auto. Then select the second point, right click and go auto, just to make this a bit smoother. Then we just want to select the enemy body, drag up here and look for set relative location. Right click on this and go split structure pin. If we go back to the viewport, we're going to be moving our enemy in the z-axis, so this one here. I'm just going to move my enemy body back to 0. Then if we go over to our event graph, because we're only going to be moving our enemy's location in the z, we can drag up here and look for get relative location. Right click here and go split structure pin and select from x into x and from y into y. Then for the z one, we can drag off this enemy movement and look for alert. Connect from the enemy movement into the alpha. For the A, right click here and break the link and make sure that this is 0. And also make sure that your enemy body, that the location is starting on 0. Then for this B value, we can right click and promote this to a variable. And we can just call this our enemy movement distance. Compile this, make it instance editable and expose and spawn. I'm just going to give this a default value of 5. Then connect this into update. And this into Z. Then go compile, save this. And let me drag 2 enemies somewhere into the level. I'm going to select this enemy and press Alt. And I'm just going to click the save button to save everything. Sometimes Unreal Engine crashes. Okay, for the second one, I'm going to make it 10. And now if I go play, my enemies are, okay, yeah, they're moving. It's just they're not moving very much. So maybe I should increase this. So I'll make this, let's say, 30. Maybe I'll move my enemy up a bit. And I'll make this one, let's say, 45. And as we can see, our enemies are moving. Maybe I should have made the timeline a bit faster, but feel free to basically play around with that. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is make it so the enemy can basically face the player when it sees them. So if we go back to our enemy, go to the viewport, and just go add and look for pawn sensing. This gives our enemy the ability to basically hear and see. So right now, my enemy is not facing the right direction. If I just select the enemy, and I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees. So right, we want it to basically be aligned with these lines. And this green line basically represents my enemy's vision. We can play around with the enemy's vision angle by playing around with the peripheral vision. So as you can see, when I make this smaller, this basically makes my enemy's vision smaller. I'm just going to make it 90 though. Then the other main setting we need to basically play around with is the sight radius. So we can basically play around with how far my enemy can see. So the default value is 5,000. I'm just going to make my 3,000. And I'll make my enemy's peripheral vision 70. We don't need to worry about the other lines as we're not going to use them. Okay, next if we scroll down and go on see pawn, basically whenever my enemy sees the player character, this on see pawn node is going to fire. And what we're going to do is basically tell the enemy to rotate towards the player character. So if we just create a new variable, I call it should rotate. When our enemy sees the player, we just want to drag in the should rotate variable and just check it to make sure it's true. Then if we go here and find this event tick, this will basically run every single frame. If our enemy can't see the player character, we're going to make it rotate towards them. So to do this, we can drag off here and look for set back to rotation. And then if we just right click and look for the find look at rotation, basically we want to get the enemy's location and then the player character's location, and this will basically make the enemy face towards our player. So for the start, I'm going to right click and look for get back to location and connect this into start. And for the target, we can just right click and look for get player character and then drag off here and look for get actor location and connect this into here. Although we only want to do this if the enemy can see the player. So I'm going to create a branch. So if we drag off here and look for the branch, and the condition is going to be whether the should rotate is true. And then I'll connect this into here. Okay, we also need to make it so our enemy can lose sight of the player. So if we drag off here and look for a retrievable delay, and make this 4 seconds. So the way the retrievable delay will work is if this isn't called, then after 4 seconds, it's going to basically fire here. So as long as my enemy can see the player character, it's going to keep on firing this. However, if we go more than 4 seconds without seeing the player character, then we're going to tell the game that the enemy should no longer rotate towards them. So just connect from here to here, and go compile, save, and let's test this out. So if I go in the sight of my enemy, we can see it is basically rotating towards me, it's facing me, and if I move far away, it should basically stop rotating towards me. Okay, so I think it stopped rotating towards me because I'm way out of its sight radius. Okay, yeah, so that's working nicely. The next thing we want to do is code it so the player can actually shoot and kill the enemy. So if we just go over to our enemy blueprint and select the enemy BP itself, go over to details and look for tag, and we just want to add a tag and just call this the enemy tag. Then we also just want to create a new particle effect for when we're basically hitting our enemy. So we go to sprites, we have this hit sprite, and we're going to make a particle effect out of it. So we just right click on the particle map and go create material instance and call this the hit underscore met. Open this up, select the texture, and change this to be the hit particle. Okay, nice. We can save this. Then if we go over to the particles folder, I'm going to select the second particle that we made, right click on this and go duplicate. And I'm just going to call this my hit system. If I open this up, we just want to select this and change this to be the hit material. And I can't see it, I think this sprite is a lot smaller than the other ones. So we just select it and make the random uniform a lot higher. So make it between 60 and 70. Okay, we can save this. Then if we go back to our first person character, basically we do a line trace to see if we hit anything when we're shooting our gun. If we do hit something, then we're going to basically spawn some particles there. So if we drag off this R hit result and look for break hit result. Then if we just select this anchor, we want to drag off hit actor and check to see if the actor that we hit has the enemy tag. So if we look for actor as tag, and the tag is going to be enemy. If this is true, so I'll drag off here and look for branch, then we are going to spawn a system. So we drag up here and look for spawn system, and we want this one, spawn system at location, and the system is going to be the hit one, and where we're going to spawn it, just drag from location into here, and then we just want to connect this into play, and I'll also just connect from false into here. Even if we don't hit anything, we still want our animation to play. We can just double click to add a reroute node to make this a bit clearer. Okay, so when my player hits something with the enemy tag, it should spawn some particles. Let's test this out. If I go compile and I play my game, when I hit that enemy, we can see some particles spawn near it. Nice. Okay, the next thing I want to do is make it so the enemy can actually die when we shoot it enough. So if we go back to our enemy, right click and look for event any damage. So whenever we cause damage to the enemy, this node will fire. We just want to give our enemy some health, so I'm just going to create a new variable and call it health. Go here, click this X, go to variable, and change this to be a float. Compile this and make this have a value of 3. So whenever our enemy takes damage, we're going to get our enemy's health and subtract it from how much damage it took. Then we'll tell the game that this is our enemy's new health. So I'll drag in the health and set it and connect it into here and from here into here. Then when our enemy is damaged, if the enemy's health is less than or equal to 0, we're going to kill our enemy. So if we drag up here and look for branch again, and then drag off true and look for destroy actor. And then this will basically destroy our enemy. Next, if we close this and go over to our first person character, if we do hit something which basically has the enemy tag, we can just drag up here and look for apply damage, connect from true into here, and this into here. And we're just gonna make it so we do 1 damage every time we hit the enemy with our gun. Now if we go compile, close this, and I go play, and I shoot the enemy 3 times, it should disappear. Okay, nice. So I shot the enemy enough times, and then it disappears and dies. Nice. The next thing we're going to do is make it so the enemy can actually shoot and damage our player character. If we open up the enemy blueprint, in some free space, just right click, and look for add custom event, and call this shoot player. When we call this custom event, we just want to drag off here and look for set timer by event. Drag off this event and look for add custom event and just call this shoot. For the time of this, just right click on this and promote it to a variable and call it fire rate. This is going to be the fire rate of our enemy. Just make sure that this has a minimum value of 0.2. If we just compile this and then give this a value of 1, but make sure that this at least has a minimum value of 0.2. We'll see why in a second. We just want to check looping. So it's going to do this event every 1 second or whatever you make this. And we also just want to store this event as a variable. So if we right click here and promote this to a variable, I call it shoot event. Okay, so when we're shooting with our enemy, we're basically going to do a line trace from our enemy towards the player. So if we drag up here and look for line trace by channel, where this is going to start, we can just right click and look for get actor location. And where this is going to end, because we make our enemy always face our player character when it sees them, we can just end this a couple units in whatever direction my enemy is facing. So if we just right click and look for get actor rotation. Drag off here and look for get forward vector. Then we just want to drag off here and look for multiply. And then right click here and change this to be to float. Right click on this and promote it to a variable. And we can call this our fire distance. Compile this, and I'm just going to make mine 1,000 for now. We can play along with this later if we need to. And then we just want to drag off here, look for add, connect this into here, and this into end. That way we're going to be ending our line trace 1,000 units in whatever direction my enemy is facing. Just so that we can see this, change the draw debug to be full duration. And then on this shoot player, we just want to drag up here and look for do once. You'll see why we do this in a second. And then we just want to right click and look for add custom event and call this reset do once and connect this into here. Okay, so when our enemy sees our player character, we are going to call the shoot player custom event. And we don't want this to basically keep on spawning. That's why we have this do once. So after we do this, we're going to call the shoot player. Then if my enemy goes more than 4 seconds without seeing the player character, we are going to stop this event from running, and then we're going to call the reset do once. So to stop the event, we can drag it in, get it, and then drag off here and look for clear, and then validate timer by handle. Then we can just drag off here and look for reset the do once. Okay, let's compile this and make sure that this is on full duration. And then if I go play and I go over to my enemy, when it sees me, every 1 second it should shoot the line trace, which is at least 1,000 units long. Okay, nice. The next thing we're going to do is make it so our player is damaged whenever they're hit with a line trace. So if we just go over to the UI folder and to the crosshair widget blueprint, I'm going to go to my palette and look for an image, drag it somewhere into the screen, and give this a Z order of -1. This will make sure that this is behind our crosshair. Then we just want to go over to Edgar and select this one in the bottom right, and for the offset, put 0 in each of the values. Then for the tint, make this red, and then make the alpha value something like 0.3. So it's going to have this reddish tint, and we're going to make this basically appear whenever our player is damaged. We're going to make this an animation though. So if we just select this image, make it a variable, and I'm just going to call this my damage. Not sure why it made this go white again, so I'm just going to make this red and change the alpha to be like 0.3. Then we go here where it says animations. We're going to go add new animation and just call this the fade. Select it, go track, and we just want to track the damage. That's what I call this image. Select it, then go track, and we're going to track its render opacity. So here is render opacity, and we want this to go from 1. So I'm just going to add a key. Then if we go to, let's say, 0.5, then if I change this to be 0, and flip this key, over the duration of 0.5 seconds, the screen will go from red to nothing again. Nice. Okay. I'm done with my animation, so we can just select somewhere off of the screen. And I don't want this damage overlay to initially appear. So in the search, I'm just going to look for visible and make sure that this is hidden. Then if we go over to our graph, right click and look for add custom event, and we can just call this player damaged. When this happens, we want to drag in our damage. So this is the image, and we just want to drag up here and look for set visibility and set it so that it's visible. Then we just want to drag up here and look for play animation, and for the animation we can drag in this fade, get it, connect it into here, and then I know this animation is 0.5 seconds, so I'm going to have a delay of 0.5 seconds, and then I'm just going to copy this and paste it again here, and I'm going to make it so it's hidden again, that way I can't see it, then we can just compile this. Then if I just go over to my first person character, what I'm going to do is go over to the bit where we make the crosshair widget blueprint and right click here and promote this to a variable. And we can call this our HUD. And a quick way to basically break the links is if we just hold Alt on our keyboard and just select here and just connect from here into here and from here into here, just to make everything a bit more tidy. We can compile this. Then it's on free space. I'm going to right click and look for event any damage. And event any damage, what I'm going to do is drag in my HUD, drag off here, and pull the player damaged custom event that we made. And I'll just connect from here to here. Compile this. Then if I go back to my enemy blueprint, when we do our line trace, if we hit our player, so I'm just going to drag off here, and look for a break, hit result. Whatever we hit with our line trace, we're going to apply damage to it. So I drag off, hit actor, and look for apply damage. And I'm just going to put in 1 here, connect from here to here, then go compile. If I go play, and I go over towards my enemy, it will see me and start shooting me, although I'm not being damaged, and I think I know why. If we go back to our enemy, we do a line trace in the visibility channel. If I just close this and I go over to my first person character, go over to the viewport and set the capsule component. By default, the player's capsule collision ignores the visibility channel. So if you scroll down and go over to here where it says collision and go over to collision presets, right now we can see the visibility channel is set to ignore. We need to change this to be block. That way we can be attacked by our enemy. To do this, go to collision presets, change this to be custom, and then change the visibility to be block. Then go compile. This way our player is going to be blocked in the visibility channel, which is the channel that our enemy uses. And now if I go play, and I go towards my enemy, we can see I'm being damaged by it. Nice. And I can also kill this enemy, so I'll just shoot it, then he dies. Okay. The next thing I want to do is fix a couple of bugs that I found. So I've noticed that my gun actually stops doing its shooting animation, and if I just shoot the enemy, sometimes I get this error message. So here it is, basically blueprint runtime error. It's saying access none, trying to read the break hit actor function from my from here inside of my first person character. So the reason my gun is not doing its shooting animation is because we need to connect from here into play from start. That's my fault. When I was basically reconnecting everything, I think I reconnected some things incorrectly. To fix the second error, it's basically saying it's struggling to read the data from here. In order to fix this, we can just drag off this hit actor and look for is valid. So only if it's valid, we're going to basically do this check. And this will basically prevent that error from occurring. We can just double click to add a reroute node and connect this from damaged actor here and from here into here. And then if this is not valid, actually what I'm going to do is just move where I place this. So if we just hold the Alt button, and I'm just going to also press Alt here, then I'm just going to select these nodes. And what we can do is drag up here and look for a sequence. So the way a sequence will work is first it's going to do this, then it's going to do this. So connect from play from start into here. And this should just make everything a bit more tidier and remove the errors we were having. So now if I go play, my shooting mechanism is working again. And my gun goes backwards, and I get no errors. Nice. The next thing I want to do is make it so it's a bit more clear when my enemy is shooting the player character. So we're going to do that with some particle effects. So if we go back to our enemy blueprint, go over to the viewport, and just select the left blaster and go add, and look for a Niagara system, so our Niagara particle system, and we can just call this our particles. We want to go here and change this to be the burst 1, and just move this in front of the left blaster. So sorry, this one. So I'm going to select the particles here, and then I'm just going to move this in front of my left blaster. Then we just want to right click on this and go duplicate, and we can just call this particles 1 and move this onto the right blaster and just leave it there. Then if we go over to the event graph, this is why I wanted to make the fire rate at least 0.2 seconds. After we shoot, we want to drag in our particles, drag off here and look for set system, and we want set Niagara system asset. Change this to be burst 1, and then I'll still drag in this, connect it into here. Then we're going to have a delay of 0.2 seconds, so look for delay. And then we just want to copy this, paste it, and change this to be the burst 2. Let's compile and save everything. And now if I go play and I go over here, we should see some particle effects appear when our enemy is shooting. They're a bit small, so what I'm going to do is just go to my particles folder, select this first one, duplicate it, and I'm just going to call this my enemy 1 system. Then I'm going to select the second one, duplicate it, and call this the enemy 2 system. Open this up and select the initial particle, and for this I'm going to make it uniform, and I'm just going to make it 55 actually. I will close this, and then I'm going to do the same here. Select it, make this uniform, and I'm going to make this 55. Then we go back to our enemy. I'm going to change this to be the enemy 1 system and the enemy 2 system. And now I go compile, and I go play, and I go over here. My enemy's particles are a lot bigger and clearer. Okay, nice. So I think my enemy is a bit too accurate. Every single time it hits me, and I don't really want this. So let's make it so our enemy can sometimes miss its shots. If we go back to our enemy blueprint, we make it so our enemy's line trace basically end a couple units in whatever direction my enemy is facing. So if we just go over here and look for add, right click here and look for split structure pin and go over to the Z. If we just right click and look for random float in range, and feel free to play around with this. I'm going to make the max 500, connect this onto Z, and then this into the end. This way my enemy's line trace is going to be random in the Z axis. If I compile this and I go play, if I go over to this enemy, okay, so it missed me. The first line trace was a bit above that, and then the others hit me. Okay, so with this, it's a bit better because sometimes my enemy can actually miss its shots, and I prefer this. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is add some sound effects to our game. Kenny also included some cool sound effects for our game. So the first sound effects we're going to set up are going to be the jumping and landing. For the jumping one, here's 3 different jumping sound effects. If we just select all 3 of these, right click and go create single cube, and just call this jump underscore cube. If I open this up, when we play the sound, it's going to randomly play one of these 3 sounds. So if we just go over to our first person character, whenever they jump, if we just drag up here and look for play sound at location, and just look for the jump cue that we made, and for the location, if we just right click and we'll get actor location. If I go compile and play, whenever I jump, it should play that sound effect. He also has some landing sound effects. So if we just right click and look for event, land, so event on land, whenever my player character lands on the ground, it's gonna call this event. And what we're gonna do is just copy this, paste it, and call the land sound effect. He also has a sound effect for whenever we shoot our gun. So after here, I'm just gonna paste again. I copied this, so we just go Control C and Control V to paste this. And whenever I shoot, we want to play the blaster sound effect. We can compile this. For the other sounds he has the enemy getting destroyed, the enemy being hurt, the enemy attacking. Okay, I think that's it. So if we go over to our enemy, we can go here in the outlier and also open up the enemy blueprint. Whenever my enemy is... If my enemy is damaged and it has more than 0 health, we can drag up here and look for play sound at location. And the sound will be the enemy being hurt. For the location, we can right click and look for get actor location and connect this into here. We can then copy this, paste it, and just for our enemy is destroyed, we can play the enemy destroy, and then we can destroy our enemy. And then whenever our enemy is shooting, we can drag up here, look for play sound at location, and play the enemy attack. And then I can just connect from here into here. Okay, let's go compile. And now I go play. My game should have some sound effects. Okay, nice. The next thing I'm going to do is quickly place some of the models that come with this asset pack. So in the models folder, there is some platforms. So there's grass platform, some walls. So I'm just going to place some of these around my level. When you're placing this platform, make sure to place the jump pad platform. So I'm just going to quickly do that.
Hello, so I've designed my level. So I also moved the player start here. And if I play my game, I also think I made my enemy's sight radius just a bit too high because they all can see me from here. So I'm actually just going to reduce it. So right now it's 3000. I want to make it 900. Feel free to play around with it, though. Okay, I think that's a bit other. Yeah, they can't really see me unless I close. Okay, and I also wanted to just remove the floor of my game. So if I just select it, I'm removing the floor. And then I'm also just going to select here. And sorry, if we go here to the outlier tab, we can remove the volumetric clouds. That way it's just here, an empty, kind of like empty. And if you want, we can go here where it says fog, and we can basically play around with this. So by default, Unreal Engine's fog density isn't very high, but we make this like 1. You can see the game is a lot more like foggier, and we can change the color of this. So I think it's here. Yeah. So here, as you can see, I can basically change the color to what I want this to be. Maybe I want it to be, I don't know, kind of dark. But I'm going to make mine... Actually, I'll just leave mine at the default. But I just wanted to show you this. In case you want to change the color. If we select the exponential fog again and scroll down and just go to volumetric fog, we can also play around with the fog color here. So basically play around with the directional light and the exponential fog settings. We can basically really change how this level is looking. I think I'm just going to leave mine at the default. Maybe I'll just change this to be more blue.
Okay, so one of the last things I want to code is a game over screen. I want to make it so the player can die if they basically take enough damage, or if, say, they fall out of the world. So right now, my player can just kind of fall forever. Let's make it so the player can get a game over screen. So I'm just going to go to my UI, and I'm going to go user interface, widget blueprint, select a user widget. Let's just call this game over widget blueprint. We can open it up. If I go to my palette, I'm going to look for a canvas panel. And then in the palette, I'm going to look for background blur, drag this in somewhere. And for the anchor, select this one on the bottom right, and give this a value of 0 and only for offsets. And give this a Z order of -1. Then we just want to look for some text. For this text,
center it, and make this a game over. And for the font, I'm just going to make this a bit bigger, so let's make it 200. And one more thing for the background blur, which I forgot to do, we just want to go to blur strength, and basically let's make it so the blur strength is like 10. Then we can compile it. Then if we go over to the graph, event construct, this will basically fire as soon as our game over widget is on the screen. What we're going to do is just drag off here and look for set game paused and check this. This will make it so our game is paused. Then we just want to add a delay of let's say 4 seconds. Then I'm just going to drag up here and look for open level. I want this one, open level by object reference, and select whatever we called our map. So I think it's called new. Sorry, what did I call it? I called it maps. Yeah, I just called it map. If you're using Unreal Engine version 5.1 and above, it has to be open level by object reference. Otherwise, it won't work. Okay, so we can compile this. Then if we just go over to our first person character, let's create a new variable and call it health. Let's make it a float. Compile this, and let's give our player 10 health. And when our player is damaged, we'll get their health, subtract it by the damage they took, then tell the game this is our new health. Connect this in here. Then let's have a branch. If my player's health is ever less than or equal to 0, we can create a widget, and that widget is going to be the game over widget. Let's just compile this and go back to our enemy blueprint, and let's just make sure our enemy is doing damage. So yes, I coded it so the enemy does 1 damage. And for testing purposes, I am just going to give my player character 1 health, and I'm just going to make an enemy spawn in front of them. So here. Okay, so if I go play, this enemy shoots me. Okay, I missed. Okay, so it is not working. Oh, sorry. So basically, when my player has 0 health, what we need to do is just add this to our viewport. And now if I go compile and I go play, when this enemy shoots me, I get game over, and then in 5 seconds, it should reopen the level. Okay, nice. I can delete this. And let's give our player 10 health again. And then we're also going to basically create a volume, and if my player character falls into this volume, they'll also get game over. So if we just go here where it says quickly add things to the project, go basics, and we want a trigger box. Then just go here, select and scale objects, and I'll actually show you something. If we just go over to here, where it says perspective, and change this to be top, then scroll out. This is kind of another way which we can view Unreal Engine. And if we just scale this box, so I'm just going to scale it here. To scale this faster, I'm going to increase my scale snap to 1. Still taking a while. Okay, and then I'm also going to scale it this way as well. Okay. And then I'm just going to change this back to perspective. And we just want to make sure that this is beneath everything. So around here. Okay. Make sure we have this trigger box selected. Then if we go here where it says open level blueprint, and we just want to right click and go add event for trigger box, go collision and go add on actor begin overlap. Drag off other actor and look for class to first person character blueprint. If my first person character overlaps this volume, what we're going to do is drag up here and look for create widget. This widget will be the game over widget, and then we will add this to our viewport. Now if I go compile and I go play, let's say I'm crazy and I jump off here, we can see I get game over, and then it should load my level again after 5 seconds. Okay, nice.
Oh, and one more thing. I never removed the line trace. So if you want to remove the line trace, let's go here to our first person character and change this to be none. Also go over to the enemy and change this to be none. And compile this. And what I'm going to do is actually go through this project and just comment all the nodes. That way it's all organized. And if you want, you can download the completed project files for this project. That'll be somewhere available in the description of this video. That's all for this video. If you want to learn how to create even more full games inside Unreal Engine, make sure to check out my website. It has a bunch of different courses on how to make games in Unreal Engine, from 2D platformers, FPS games, to top-down shooters, and even more. You can find the link somewhere in the description of this video. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!